cross-examination. That's where I'm...
Carefully.
Judge, I need a little more guidance than carefully. I mean,
Well, I'm still trying to figure out how all this post stuff's relevant anyway, okay? But that's aside. I would just leave it alone for now, get going for a while, and then we can see where it goes, and then I can, if I change my mind, I'll let you know. Or you can try to tackle it, but you got to do it carefully.
All right.
You can be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry, I hope you had a great weekend. We're going to continue with the testimony. Mr. Baez, your cross.
yes, sir.
We need the doctor in here. Doctor, remember you're still under oath. Go ahead and get yourself situated. We're going to speak up. And ladies and gentlemen, the jury, the vote on Friday was we're going to be taking this stuff down, but we can't officially do it until the city does their thing. So you may be pleasantly surprised this weekend on what might happen. Of course, I'll probably be in line, but that's beside the point. Okay? Mr. Baez.
Please support. Mrs. Ayala. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning.
And before you get started, I should explain that device there right beside you.
Yes, sir.
We're having technical difficulties on the big screen. So we went with Plan B, okay? It's to aid and assist you. It's not as nice as the big screen, but we're doing our best until we can figure out why our provider doesn't have us connected up so we can do our thing. So, with that.
Good morning, Dr. Ross.
Good morning.
Sir, this is the first time we've met, correct?
Correct.
And we've never spoken prior to today.
That's correct.
And yet you have had numerous conversations with the prosecution in this case.
I've had two, yeah.
Two. Okay.
Can you guys hear him okay? You want some volume? Give us some volume there.
Yes, Judge.
Sir, how many times prior to this case had you been to Mount Carmel West?
Prior to this case?
Yes.
Probably 2 or 3 over the years.
Okay. And you testified yesterday. I'm going to slip up and say yesterday. You testified during direct examination that you are the chief clinical officer, correct?
That's correct.
It is a fact, sir, that your title is you are the executive vice president at Trinity and chief clinical officer. Isn't that a fact?
That is correct.
Okay, so the chief clinical officer is actually your second title. Is that fair to say?
I suppose there are a number of executive vice presidents.
Okay, but you're basically, as it relates to this case, the guy from corporate. Fair description?
That's one way of phrasing it, certainly.
Okay. Now, in light of that, Trinity has 88 different hospitals.
Thereabouts, yeah, that's right.
And it is a $20 billion corporation.
Thereabouts, that's correct.
And you were sent down to lead, I guess, to be the point of contact on behalf of Trinity.
That's correct.
All right. Now, you testified that, remember, let's talk about Project Lighthouse for a minute. You testified during direct examination that Project Lighthouse has tens of thousands of documents in it, correct?
That's correct.
Would it surprise you to know it was 273,000 documents?
It wouldn't shock me, no.
I drew the short straw, so I had to read that. Now, in light of that, sir, you guys went over everything. You guys had a plan for social media, correct?
Correct.
You even developed questions that were being asked and how to answer them, correct?
Yes.
All the way down to a Facebook post, right?
I'm not directly familiar with a Facebook post, but
Okay. If someone commented negatively on Facebook about Mount Carmel, there was a protocol on how to answer and when to answer, right?
not to my specific knowledge, no, but
You can't read that, those documents.
not that I recall today.
Okay. Then, in fact, you had the media broken down by individual TV channels as well as print media, correct?
Not that I directly recall, but probably.
Do you recall reading? We're going to get into a lot of these documents today, sir. You came prepared to answer them, though, right?
Yeah, to the best of my ability.
So every single channel was broken down as well as their questions, correct?
Not that I directly recall, no. Not to that degree of specificity.
Do you recall that there were even statements of off-the-record conversations with the media?
Not that I recall.
You do know what an off-the-record conversation with the media means, though, don't you?
I do.
Okay. And so the ladies and gentlemen of the jury know this. This is when someone wants to tell the media something, but they don't want the media to tell the public who in fact gave them that information, right?
I'm not an expert on what the definition of off the record is, but it sounds generally true.
But you would agree with that statement, generally, right?
Generally speaking.
Okay. And that's not exactly the picture of transparency that you testified to under direct examination, is it?
Well, speaking generally, doing other things, sometimes that's not about being not transparent. It's about providing information on a topic.
Right, but if you don't want the public to know where it came from, that's not being transparent with the public, is it, sir?
It depends on the nature of the conversation.
So, in your definition of transparency, it's okay to give information so long as people don't know where it came from.
No, I would not agree with that.
Okay. But you would agree that there were numerous off-the-record conversations with the media on behalf of Mount Carmel and Trinity that did occur in Project Lighthouse.
And that, because as I said, not that I directly recall. And again, oftentimes they are about, details about how things function, not about things that are contrary to what's being said.
I find that answer interesting, sir, when you, in fact, were the point person for Trinity on all things press-related, were you not?
I was one of them.
Okay. So, and you do your job thoroughly, right?
To the best of my ability.
Okay. So, you didn't testify about anything having to do with the press on direct examination, did you?
I don't ask the questions that were given.
The prosecutor went from the first call you got on this case to the last thing you did. Remember all those what happened next and what happened next and what you do next questions?
Generally speaking, yes.
And not once did you tell the jury that you were the point person on behalf of Trinity for all things discussed in the media.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Not once did you testify about the media under direct examination, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Let me ask you this. You talked about this villain document. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember, sir, being shown State's Exhibit 27A? Do you see that there? I can't.
Yeah, it's not there.
Okay.
I
And
know it's not what it used to be.
okay, can you see that, sir?
I cannot see that.
Okay. I'm going to twist this a little bit your way. Oh, no. Can you see it? You might need to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's okay with, I'm
Why
going to.
don't you do this? Why don't you leave it where it was and you hand them the actual document where you need a copy for your screen, don't you?
You know what, Judge, I can run back and forth. I got decent legs. Remember that document, sir?
I do.
And you remember being asked by the prosecutor about the fact that that document didn't have a logo on it and stuff like that? You remember those questions?
I do.
And in fact, I can find the document. Give me just a second. Oh, I have it. Can you bring that up for me, Allison?
Can't bring it up.
I think I might have found it. I need to put a sticker on it. Can I get a sticker? Now, the way things work during Project Lighthouse is someone would submit a document or some questions or some statements, and then it would kind of get passed around and people would make comments, right?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay. And then after that, decisions would be made, correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you now what's Defendant's Exhibit MCD6. Okay, first I'll bring it up so that the jury can see it, and then I'll kind of figure this out. Can you see that, sir?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. May I approach, Judge?
You may.
Can I do it constantly without?
Yeah. We're going to adapt to fit the screen.
I'm taking back from the 27.
A little bit magnified.
You can do that on this.
Yeah.
Wind shut.
Okay.
You see that?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me get it so I can show it to the jury.
Yeah.
It used to be that we would just like either wave it by you or so technology's created this monster, so to speak. Well, when it didn't work this morning, it did not make my morning at all. So let's see if we can do it there.
I'm going to zoom in first, and then I'll bring it to...
You can't see how far you zoomed in.
I can see it through the reflection on the plexiglass, so that plexiglass is serving some purpose.
A little smaller.
All right, let me... Actually, I need to make it smaller now.
A little smaller.
Say, right there? Okay, good. Okay. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you recall when you read this, it talks about, after seeing version 1, emails between Mark, Brett, and Melissa about gaining alignment on big themes. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, in fact, a Mount Carmel document, right?
Yes.
And in fact, it's internal, right?
Yes.
And it is labeled confidential. Do you see that at the bottom? Can the jury see that? Where I'm putting it? Okay. Do you see that? Confidential?
I see the word.
Okay. All of these documents from Project Lighthouse were in fact confidential documents, were they not?
I don't know that all of them were, but many of them were.
Well, that's why you called it Project Lighthouse, so it could be protected under the attorney-client privilege, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
He's not qualified to answer that.
Okay. Sir, these documents were ultimately disclosed because of the lawsuit with the nurses against the hospital, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
If you know.
Okay, I'll let him answer. Do you know?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so they were never supposed to see the light of day. Isn't that a fact, sir?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, you're asking him to speculate. Sustained.
I'll withdraw the question, Mitch. Now, the statements that you told the jury under direct examination about who is to be made the villain, who's to be the victim, and who is to be the vindicator. The vindicator was the hospital, right?
I don't recall what again, I was not directly involved in that work at that time.
Okay, but who's supposed to be the vindicator? You have no idea? One Superman, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it has to be one of the parties, right? The patient,
Your Honor.
victim?
He's answering. He was not involved in this document.
Okay, it's a compound question right now.
Sure. Okay.
Rephrase.
I'll rephrase. Under this scenario, sir, you know that the victims were supposed to be the patients, right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. The villain was supposed to be Dr. Husel, the nurses, and the pharmacists, right?
Specific to the document that you're holding,
Yes.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And the vindicator would be Mount Carmel, right?
I believe that's correct, specific to the document that you're holding.
Okay, now you testified under direct examination, sir, that you had an outside consultant and that he's the one that came up with these ideas, right?
There were a number, but he was one of them, the first one.
Okay, and so we're clear, the person we're talking about under this document
Okay, you remember, you gotta say what the document is. before
Yes,
you
yes,
put it on
I'm
the
still on
screen.
MCD 6.
Okay.
Now, you see, sir, Mark's comments, right?
Correct.
Can everyone see that? Okay. And then right below that, all of the choices and the discussion topics. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Now, on the document that you were shown under direct, well, let me strike that. Let me ask you about this. Mark is a gentleman by the name of Mark Weaver, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Weaver.
Weaver.
Yes. And Mark Weaver is in fact considered the communications counsel. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, he was not functioning as counsel. He was functioning as a consultant.
Right. But you know that he is, a former prosecutor of 20 years,
Objection.
worked for the Department of Justice.
Okay, there's an objection.
Relevancy as to Mark Weaver's qualifications and background.
We're discussing, this has been brought up.
No, he's also objecting you're testifying. You didn't ask him what his credentials were, did you?
I'm asking him now if
No,
he's
you're
aware.
testifying now.
Okay, I'll
Ask him the question.
I'll ask it a different way. Since the prosecutor brought up what you consider his document under direct examination, I want to ask you, are you aware, sir, that Mr. Weaver was a prosecutor for 20 years, worked for the Department of Justice?
Staying.
Sir, you said he was not acting as counsel, but he in fact was someone brought in because of his unique talents and skill, correct?
I wasn't involved in his selection. His selection was prior to my involvement, so I can't speak to why he was brought in.
Okay. But at some point, you became familiar with him and his work, did you not?
Indirectly, yes, and I met with him, I believe, once.
Okay. And you were aware that he was the former Assistant Attorney General of the state of Ohio?
Objection.
I'll permit it.
You are.
I was not aware.
And were you not aware he worked for the Department of Justice?
No, I don't think I was aware of that.
Okay. So you have people making important decisions where you're the actual point person and you have no idea what their background is? Is that what your testimony is?
Okay, he said that he wasn't doing it during that time. Are you asking about his total career? Because that's really not relevant.
I think he did say, well, let me ask you about this. He was never actually terminated, was he, sir?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Well, you testified about him, you guys moving away from him. There's no document in those 270 plus thousand documents that say that he is terminated, we don't want your advice anymore, or we're not going to follow your advice. Isn't that a fact, sir?
What happened was we brought in a different communications consultant and followed and worked with them to garner their advice.
In fact, sir, you're referring to Gerard?
I am.
Okay. Gerard actually has been working for Trinity prior to this case, was it not?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. If it's possible they were engaged somewhere else within the system.
Sir, you're again the point person for all of this going on. Did you not know that Gerard had a 3-year contract with Trinity?
Not that I recall today.
Okay. And they weren't exactly brought on. They were involved as early as December 5th, Gerard was, correct?
I believe that's correct, but I don't remember the specific date.
So all of this is going on simultaneously, though, right? When I say all of this, I'm referring to Mr. Weaver being involved and Gerard being involved, right?
There was overlap.
So what I want to get back to is the document that you were shown under direct examination, State's Exhibit 27A, which was really Defense Exhibit MCD 6. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
And you testified a few moments ago that the questions would be brought up, kicked around, comments made, and then decisions were made. Do you remember that?
Generally speaking, yes. That's what I said.
Okay. So on the bottom of that document, it states Ed's decision, right?
That's what it says.
And who is Ed?
Ed is Ed Lamb, who at the time was the chief executive officer for Mount Carmel.
He's the top guy at Mount Carmel, right?
Correct.
Okay. And this was more than just, this document's more than just something that was brought up by Mark Weaver that you didn't actually agree with. I know that's what you testified in direct. This, in fact, is what decision was made by Ed, right?
Well, I believe what I said at direct was that it was a decision in time, but not the final decision.
Now, Ed's not dead, right? Ed's the president of Mount Carmel. He's no longer with Mount Carmel, right?
Correct.
He was let go as well.
He's no longer with Mount Carmel, that's correct.
Okay. Now, the president of Mount Carmel decided that Husel would be the primary villain. The involved pharmacists would also be villains, as well as the nurses, not the two that had preceptors, right?
I don't know the date on this particular document, but at that point in time, that was the direction, was not the final direction.
Okay. And you testified you kind of changed direction at some point, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we've gone over some of those changes of directions, but there's no disputing that the president of Mount Carmel made the decision to make William Husel the primary villain, as well as the nurses and pharmacists, all of these healthcare providers, these people who work for you. The decision was made to make them a villain by the president of Mount Carmel, correct?
Again, that was, at that point in time, that's what the document says. That's what the judge says. The document says was his decision at that point in time.
Now, sir, you testified that you met, under direct examination, you talked about, and in fact, when I asked you earlier, you said you met with the prosecutor 2 times, right?
I met with Mr. Zion 2 times.
Well, when I say the prosecutor, I'm referring to every prosecutor that's ever touched this file.
Oh, apologies. Then no, I met with Mr. Zion 2 times.
Okay, well, that may have been my question, but as far as your direct examination, over the last couple of days, you only discussed 2 meetings, correct?
I believe I don't remember exactly, but I believe I discussed 2 specific meetings. I did not say I only met with them 2 times under direct.
So we're clear, you talked about the first meeting you did not go to. That was done with Mr. Greg Peterson, the criminal defense lawyer. And you also talked about the first time you actually met with them, which would have been December 17th. Isn't that a fact?
Sounds right, yes.
Okay. So then, subsequent to that, you met with them, and this one you did testify to on January 10th, did you not?
Yes.
And you stated that the reason for your meeting with them was to go over what would be told to the families, to kind of get a little, I guess, collaboration with them on that?
I believe what I said, and that was the purpose of the December meeting,
Okay.
was to discuss the timing with which we would speak to the families. Because we wanted to speak to the families, but did not want to do so in a way that would be disruptive to their investigation.
Okay. And then you met again on January 24th with them. Oh, no, excuse me. It was not that. Excuse me. On February 5th, you met with them with the prosecutors, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Thereabout.
You didn't tell either the prosecutor or the jury in the last under direct examination what that meeting was about, did you, sir?
To the best of my recollection, that was a meeting where they had asked me to prepare a document that would speak to the facts, the clinical details on those cases.
And then, sir, you met again with them 2 days later on February 7th, did you not?
No, I don't remember meeting with them twice, 2 days apart.
Okay. I'm going to show you, let me get the actual. If I could have the court's indulgence, so I want to make sure I get the document that's here. Just want to show this thing. Judge, may I approach the witness? Sir, I'd like to direct you, I'm going to show you the timeline from Project Lighthouse. If I could direct your attention to the bottom of the page.
Okay.
February 5th and February 7th. Do you see that?
I do.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether you met with prosecutors on those days?
It says I did.
Okay. So
So that's no, it doesn't refresh your memory?
It does not refresh my memory. I do not remember meeting with them twice, 2 days apart. I remember meeting with them in early February.
Okay, so you don't remember that. Now, let me ask you this. What about February 22nd? Oh, I'm sorry. March 11th, 2019. Do you recall meeting with them on that date?
I remember meeting with them in early March. I'll assume that, I don't remember specific to March 11th, but I remember meeting with them in early March.
Okay. And then, do you remember meeting on March 14th with the detectives?
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay. So, fair to say, you met with them a lot more than twice, right?
Again, I believe your question earlier this morning was meeting with Mr. Zion, but I met with them prior to the entire prosecution team more than twice, yes.
Now, sir, you also, remember when we were talking a moment ago about meeting with, or I'm sorry, having off-the-record conversations with the media. You said that occurred, but you weren't necessarily aware of it.
I don't recall being aware of it. That's correct.
Okay. Now, you in fact, sir, met with the Columbus Dispatch, did you not?
We did.
Okay. And you had an off-the-record conversation with them, did you not?
I believe those conversations were on the record, but
Okay. It's funny, I Googled and I looked and did research on, and I didn't see a single quote.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, you sustain. You can ask questions.
Are you aware of any stories coming out from the Columbus Dispatch that has your name on it? Or your quotes?
I believe so, yes, sir.
So there's actual quotes of your testimony, of your statements with them?
With the Columbus Dispatch?
Yeah.
I believe so, yes, sir.
And you met with them not only once, but twice, did you not?
I believe that's correct.
So you had a little more involvement when it came to the press on this issue than you have testified to under direct examination, right?
Okay, sustained.
You were quite involved with the press on this case, were you not, sir?
Yeah, I believe what you're referencing is, when I was referencing is the early part of the process. I was involved in it later in the process. That's correct.
So your testimony is that it was something you did later on.
That I was not involved early in the process. I was involved toward the end of December and thereafter.
Now, out of the other 88 hospitals that Trinity has, how many of these hospitals had max dose policies with palliative withdrawals?
To the best of my knowledge, none did.
Okay. And so Mount Carmel was not an outlier in that area?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you testified that the reports that were done by, I keep messing up her name. Leslie Volman, the Project Lighthouse reports. You testified under direct that there were 5 reports, right?
Correct.
And you also told the jury that that the report parameters kept being expanded so that you would make sure you had all the patients that might have been affected. You recall that testimony?
I do.
Okay. Now, I want to go over the parameters of the search.
Okay.
And I'm showing you Defendant's Exhibit MCD 14.
Can you see it? Since he didn't show it to you ahead of time.
I can see it, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Somebody can.
so the first search that was expired patients, that means patients that have passed away, correct?
Correct.
Within 400 minutes from Dr. Husel, correct?
Correct.
To the patient's discharge date and time for fentanyl of 800 micrograms or greater. Do you see that?
I do.
Now, the second report was run the same thing, but the change was made from 800 micrograms to 500. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's consistent with your testimony that you expanded the parameters of that search, right?
That the team did, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then we have report number 3, which was run on December 5th. And the change here is that you got rid of the 400-minute time. Do you see that?
Correct.
So that would have expanded the search, right?
That's correct.
And December 5th is the date that you notified the prosecutors on this case that there was a potential criminal matter, right?
That Mount Carmel did, that's correct.
Yes, Mount Carmel.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the report where Tracy Young's name comes up, correct?
That's correct.
And that's because after receiving 2,500 micrograms of fentanyl, she went on to...
Sustained.
Well, okay. And that report indicated that she had received 2,500...
Objection, Your Honor.
Let's go sidebar. You guys haven't talked to each other at all today, I know that, so get busy. Ms. Schaefer? Relax, doctor, we'll be right with you. Quite the obstacle course there for you, don't we, Ms. Schaefer? Are you ready there, Sam, mandatory reporter? Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started back. Mr. Baez.
Judge, I was advised that it might be easier for the jurors to see. Actually, I don't know.
Well, we had a problem.
All right.
We did a test run before you guys came in, and they couldn't see it back that far, but if you can see it, both of you two at the end, can you see it up there in the top?
Diane, if it could be darkened a little bit, can it be?
I can't necessarily fix that.
The answer is no.
You can't see it because of the darkness on it?
I can't, it prints for me.
What's that? I can't see what it is at all.
Can you lower the lights?
Relax.
Glare. Can you turn the lights down a little bit?
Oh, okay.
Well, that goes into this whole panel up here that's currently spinning. It's been spinning since I got in here around 8:25 or so. Okay, let's make the best with it. Go ahead.
Doctor, I'll try my best not to use this as much as I can, okay?
Yeah.
So let's try that together if we can. You're aware that T.Y. and Tracy Young are one and the same when we refer to them, to that person, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're aware that report number 3 on that was ran on December 5th, 2018 is the one that Tracy Young's name came up on, correct?
I became aware of that after the fact, but yes, her name is on that report.
Okay. Now, the question, I guess the exercise that we were going through was that your testimony under direct was that the searches kept expanding to be able to get more patients. You recall that? That's where we're at in the line of questioning?
Yes, I recall that.
Okay. And reports 1 and 2 did just that. We covered that, right? Mm-hmm. Now we have Tracy Young, right? And report number 4, which was run on the 19th, and report number 5. Let's go over report number 4 first. Report number 4 now basically goes, the only difference here now is it talks about using new medication data reporting parameters ordered at any dose, but it now limits it down to 120 minutes of the discharge date and time, which basically means that a person passed away within 120 minutes of getting the medication, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That, in fact, eliminated Tracy Young from that report, did it not?
I don't recall the specifics of that report, but it would have.
It would have, because you know Tracy Young lived for 9 days
Objection, Your
after
Honor.
receiving this dose of
Okay.
fentanyl, correct?
Do you know whether that, do you have actual knowledge that she lived that time?
I do have actual knowledge.
Okay, you can answer.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, report number 5 also limits it to 120 minutes, correct?
That's correct.
Thereby, again, eliminating Tracy Young from these reports, correct?
That's correct.
Now, in the several meetings you had with the prosecutors, you never brought to their attention the name Tracy Young, did you, sir?
That's not correct.
Okay. And
Well, I did bring.
Hold on, stop.
I did bring Tracy
Okay.
Young to the attention of the prosecutor.
And when exactly did you disclose Tracy Young to the prosecutors?
So I personally discovered Tracy Young, not through that report, but through a different communication around March of 2019. And then I brought it to the prosecution, I believe it was in the middle of April of 2019.
And that's because Dr. Husel had brought it up to his civil attorney's attention, correct?
That's correct.
And it was the civil attorney who asked Mount Carmel for the records of Tracy Young, correct?
That's correct.
Were you involved in the decision to tell Dr. Husel's civil lawyer that you had no record of Tracy Young ever dying at Mount Carmel?
To my knowledge, that's not what was said, but I wasn't directly involved.
My question to you, sir, were you involved in that decision to tell them?
Objection, Your Honor. He's answered this question. He is not aware of this.
Okay, stop. Finish your question.
Were you involved in the decision to advise the lawyer that you had no record of Tracy Young ever passing away at Mount Carmel?
Your question makes an assumption that I'm not aware of.
Okay, so you
You're
can't
involved
answer, well, hold on. You can't answer the question the way it was phrased.
That's correct.
Okay, new question then.
So fair to say you were not involved in that decision if that decision was made?
If for that reason,
Yeah, I'm trying to ask it in a way that you can answer. So my question to you, sir, is your testimony that you were not involved in that decision if that decision was made?
or that the decision was made for a different reason.
Or if it was made for a different reason?
That's
your
correct.
testimony?
Yes.
So, had Dr. Husel never brought this to everyone's attention based on his experience, you would never have brought it to the prosecutor's attention.
It's been asked and answered.
I'll withdraw the question. Now, sir, you testified under direct examination that you believe that the nurses and pharmacists who were at bedside and critical witnesses in this case were spoken to by human resources after the detectives, right?
I believe some were before and some were after.
But that wasn't your testimony, was it, sir? Under direct examination, you testified specifically that the detectives spoke to, let me finish the question, that the detectives spoke to the nurses and pharmacists before human resources spoke to them, correct?
I believe what I said, but I don't directly recall, is that after they requested that, we stopped. And most of them were after.
So you're not aware that that in fact did not occur? That all nurses and pharmacists involved in these 14 patients were spoken to before, not only by human resources, but also by risk management? Are you
Objection,
aware of
Your
that, sir?
Honor, since that's not in evidence.
Okay,
It is
sustain,
evidence, the type of Gillette.
sustain, rephrase.
Sir, are you aware that the 14 patients involved in this case were spoken to two different individuals at different times before detectives ever spoke?
Objection.
Okay, sustain. Let's go sidebar here. Ladies and gentlemen, entertain yourselves. Come on, let's hear some noise. You want me to throw you in back and make you come back? Okay.
And I have here 8 It's got peanut balls in it on the soccer field. So, reevaluating what's right with soccer. And it doesn't have the.
I said, the nurses and pharmacists were
So they're.
It gets worse as they get older.
Step back and then.
Girls is way more than boys'
May I continue?
Hold on. What? Okay. Do we know when? Okay,
May I proceed?
you may.
Dr. Roth, if I'm had said patients earlier, but I'm referring to the nurses and the pharmacists, that they were spoken to third by the detectives in this case.
Once again, objection, Your Honor. Assuming facts not in evidence.
I'll permit it. Do you know?
I do not know.
So when you testified under direct, it was your impression that the nurses and pharmacists had been spoken first by to the police and second by human resources?
That was my belief and understanding, yes.
Okay. Now, the pharmacists, the patients in this case, you testified under direct examination that you met with Ron O'Brien and also the Vice President of Planning and Strategy to discuss who would speak to the patients' families first. Do you recall that?
As I said a few minutes ago, yeah, what we said was that we wanted to speak to the families and let them know, but wanted to do so in a way that would respect their process.
And you also stated that you wanted to be transparent to the families, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, sir, I want to ask you about your transparency with the family as it related to the conversations with these 14 patients. Were you being transparent with the family of Jeremiah Hodge and told them that 23 minutes before the palliative extubation, that Dr. Husel had performed CPR on her
Objection.
and brought her back? Brought her heart back. Did you tell them that?
Objection.
I sustained it.
Did you give them that?
Okay.
Judge, I think we're going to get a sidebar.
Yeah, well, we can do a quick one over here. That's no problem. These guys, why don't we send them on their break just a few minutes early? And let's take 15 and then we'll deal with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, see you in 15 minutes. Have a wonderful break.
All right.
And I know I shorted you on testimony today in the first session. That was technical difficulty. Sorry. Okay, y'all can be seated. Hold on, you can see for a second. Doctor, did you do any of the interviews with the families?
I did not.
Okay.
I think he testified he gave direction and he was a part of this process as to what would be told to the family.
Yeah, but he wasn't there to tell the families anything.
Okay, so I can ask him a different way. I'd rather the witness be excused for this judge.
Okay. You may step out. Go with Mr. Thomas. Remember my instructions.